The cost to Douglas County taxpayers was estimated at $1.4 million, which factors in courthouse remodeling and additional staffing, although that was based on the addition of a single judge. Christ told his fellow lawmakers that before they consider LB 10 on a second-round debate, he will work with Douglas County officials to reduce the county government's cost. In particular, he will work to delay installation of a second new judge until after the upcoming 2-year budget cycle. Senator Justice Wayne, a lawyer whose legal work includes representing youths in juvenile court, cautioned that some problems won't be solved through creating new judgeships. Some cases could be more appropriately settled in other ways, he said. He urged that school disciplinary decisions and court processes receive greater scrutiny. Christ said Wayne raised an important point. As for LB 10, the bill deserves final passage, pending resolution of the financial challenges. It's vital to provide relief to youths and families by easing this bottleneck.
I have a couple of letters to the editor in the Lincoln Journal-Star, and as usual, their letters run kind of long. This one is headlined, "Take Action on Tax Reform." To keep agriculture strong, Nebraska has to become more competitive in the area of property taxes. Anyone living along the Kansas or South Dakota border can tell you how much higher their property taxes are in Nebraska than in bordering states. If we're going to make progress to address high property taxes, we need structural reform. The governor's plan represents structural reform and is the next key step in addressing high agricultural land valuations, which contributed to our current high property tax situation. Ricketts Business Group's justified tax cut. Others raised concern. That was an article that appeared in the February 9th issue. As a businessman, Governor Ricketts understands the importance of growing agriculture in our state. Working together, we can ensure that agriculture continues to grow so Nebraska can continue to grow. Nebraska families are suffering because of the high tax rates in our state, and LB 338 sends a clear message to current and future generations of Nebraskans that our state government understands and is working toward a solution. I urge Nebraskans to write, call, and email their senators. If you want them to pass tax reform this year, you need to step up and take action. That was written by Trent Luce from Litchfield.
And there's a short editorial on the page. The state of Nebraska fines people who disobey its election laws. If violators shirk those fines, they shouldn't be allowed to be appointed or run for elective office. That's the brilliantly simple premise behind Legislative Bill 85, introduced by State Senator Carol Blood of Bellevue. She crafted it in response to new Bellevue City Councilman Pat Shannon, who owes $16,000 plus interest in fines from an anonymous flyer that attacked his opponent in a legislative race in 2004. Under LB 85, Shannon would have had to pay this fine to run for council. The bill, as amended, would let people appealing fines levied by the Nebraska Accountability and Disclosure Commission run if they post a bond that ensures the state gets paid if the appeal fails. That's a sensible compromise that strengthens the principle that public officials and candidates for office need to respect state election laws. And I do have a couple of short letters. One from Lisa Kelly of Omaha. In response to February 24th Public Pulse writer Arch Otek's question of whether those holding candles give their personal financial support to immigrants and refugees, let me assure him that my family gives thousands of dollars of our own resources, countless hours of our time, food, prayers, and anything we possibly can to assure the safety and security of refugees and immigrants in need. I have personally taken immigrants and refugees into my home and into my family for years on end, as have many others in my faith community. This is what it means to welcome the stranger. To do so is not a radical act or a shocking act, but simply a faithful act that immigrants and refugees of all faiths are human beings to be treated with respect and compassion. We have been blessed sevenfold by what they have brought into our lives. We give them far more than just our money. We give them our hearts, and those hearts are broken that our government is trying to tell us to fear and turn away the very people we love.
Okay, and I've got a letter, kind of a long one, supporting public power, and that's the headline. With everything that is going on in the nation right now, I think that there are a few things that have gone under everyone's radar. There are few bills that have been introduced in this year's legislature that are alarming to me and shouldn't go unnoticed by all Nebraskans. LB 660 and LB 657 are just a couple of those bills that I want to speak about. These two bills take a small step in the direction of weakening public power in Nebraska. One of the great benefits of living in Nebraska is our public power providers. We have access to and a voice with our public power providers, which we would not have with a private with a private power company or private provider. Currently, we can attend our public power board meetings made up of officials that we elect. That board has the responsibility to put its consumers before a profit margin. We trust our public power providers to protect and look out for their customers' best interest. As a lifelong Nebraskan, I ask that you join me in contacting your state senator to tell them that it is important to you that we protect our public power and vote down these two bills. Those two bills, again, are LB 660 and LB 657. That was written by Chris Callahan from Lincoln.
I do have one more letter from the Public Pulse from Mandy Phillips of Omaha. At face value, requiring a voter to have photo ID seems reasonable to those of us who carry a driver's license everywhere we go. In reality, the proposed constitutional amendment, Legislative Resolution 1CA, which would require all Nebraska voters to show a state-issued photo ID at the polls, is at odds with the Nebraska Constitution's promise that elections shall be free and there shall be no hindrance or impediment to a citizen's right to vote. Sure, we have to show an ID to buy beer or get on a plane, but those aren't protected constitutional rights. Voting is. Voter ID laws offer expensive solutions to provide free IDs to current state ID holders and driver's license holders to a nearly non-existent problem. A Loyola Law School study found that from 2000 to 2014, there were 31 cases of voter fraud in 1 billion votes. As a Nebraskan and an American, I value the idea of a representative democracy in which all of my fellow citizens are able to vote. I want to trust that my leaders will spend state money to solve real problems and make lives better. LR1CA would be un-Nebraskan, un-American, and a waste of money. That was from Mandy Phillips of Omaha.
Okay, let's move on now to today's living and entertainment. And as usual, I like to read Ask the Doctors, and the doctor today is Robert Ashley. And he receives this letter. Dear Doctor, my friends and I are all getting older, and I've noticed that some of them are on statins to lower their cholesterol. My doctor chose a fibrate for me. Lopid is what it's called. What's the difference between statins and fibrates, and what's special about Lopid? So he says statins and fibrates act in fundamentally different ways. Statins, more officially known as HMG-CoA reductase inhibitors, target cholesterol in the bloodstream, most of which comes from the liver, not from foods that we eat. And they work by binding to the enzyme HMG-CoA reductase, which the liver needs to form cholesterol. Statins act in another way as well, because they make cholesterol levels fall within the liver. The liver then increases production of a substance or receptor that takes LDL, the so-called bad cholesterol, from the bloodstream and shepherds it back into the liver. There it is eventually removed via the bile. Because we make more cholesterol at night, statins are given before bedtime. Fibrates, which include gemfibrozil, Lopid, and fenofibrate, target triglycerides in the bloodstream. They work by decreasing the liver's release of triglycerides and by increasing the production of lipoprotein lipase, which breaks down triglycerides. In addition, fibrates increase the formation of HDL, the so-called good cholesterol. They have only minor effects on reducing LDL. Unlike statins, fibrates should be taken before eating. Statins have undeniably shown benefits in decreasing the risk of both heart attacks and strokes. Fibrates seem to have a more narrow benefit. In 2010, a Lancet review analysis of 18 studies involving more than 45,000 patients showed a 13% decrease in heart attacks and angina among people who were taking fibrates, but no reduction in stroke risk, no decrease in overall death rates, and no decrease in death rates from heart attacks. Overall, statins appear to have greater benefit than fibrates in decreasing the risk of both heart attacks and strokes. And that's not to say fibrates aren't the right choice for some people, however. Significant elevation of triglycerides greater than 400 can cause inflammation of the pancreas. So people with very elevated triglyceride levels would benefit from a fibrate medication. So too might those with elevated triglycerides and normal LDL cholesterols. Before you suggest combining a statin and a fibrate for added benefit, be aware that the combination can increase the risk of muscle aches and possible muscle breakdown. I will prescribe this combination to my patients with very elevated triglycerides, but I monitor them carefully for any signs of muscular problems or breakdown. Also, in such cases, I try to lower the statin dose to decrease the chance of muscular symptoms. In summary, statins and fibrates work by different methods, by different mechanisms. The statins have greater benefit from fibrates in decreasing heart attacks and strokes. Fibrates, though, may be appropriate for people with elevated triglyceride levels.
From Beatrice, Nebraska. This Christmas will mark 100 years since Grandma's fruitcake first made Yuletides bright. The recipe didn't originate at the Beatrice Bakery Company, but it's keeping the tradition alive with thousands of fruitcakes produced each year for holiday celebrations across the country, the Beatrice Daily Sun reported. It was 1917 when the Lance brothers immigrated to the United States and made their way to St. Louis to open a bakery. Their grandmother's fruitcake recipe proved to be a hit as well as a treasured family heirloom. When they retired from the baking business, they needed to find a bakery that would carry on the tradition. They were looking for a company to take it over that they could trust to never change the formula, said Greg Leach, president of Beatrice Bakery. They went all over the Midwest looking for a bakery, and we bought the formula in 1963. The same ingredients have gone into the fruitcake using the same cooking techniques and a lot of the same equipment. Beatrice Bakery's scales are made of cast iron, looking very much the part of a 1917 bakery. Keeping it the same was not only a promise, but one of the reasons Grandma's fruitcake has such staying power. We slow bake it at a low temperature for a long period of time, Leach said, whereas our competitors, most of them, bake at a high temperature to get out as much as they can. Then we also have another secret little thing we do that I can't disclose. Of
That's
course.
the secret.
Grandma's fruitcake, Leach said, is moist, but contains no water. The only liquid that goes into is a mixture of brandy, bourbon, and rum, and a whole lot of fresh fruit. There's none of that plastic-looking, neon-colored candy fruit in their fruitcake. Just fresh pineapple, cherries, raisins. Beatrice Bakery orders raisins 16,000 pounds at a time every couple of months, and chopped nuts. Thousands of cakes are baked in a day, but you don't want to eat them fresh out of the oven, Leach said. Beatrice Baking Company also offers a line of cakes and breads, including their top-selling chocolate rum cake and amaretto cakes. This year, Leach said they're working on several new projects, including a pumpkin strudel cake expected to hit shelves in the fall. The non-fruitcake line, he said, has doubled in sales each year for the past 3 years. But even with increased sales, the vast majority of their business year-round is fruitcake. Fruitcake production started back up again after February 13th, which Leach said is the perfect time to get ready for the Christmas season. The ideal time for the fruitcake aging process is at least 3 months, Leach said, and they'll be cranking them out every other day until going into full-time production in September. And yes, they've heard the fruitcake jokes for years, but the Beatrice Bakery Company is having the last laugh. I've been here 38 years, and I used to get crank calls from radio stations at Christmas time, and I don't get that anymore, Leach said. I don't think there's as much negativity out there as there used to be.
I wonder why you're not supposed to eat it fresh out of the oven. That's what it...
I don't know, it has to sit in the bourbon and,
Oh, well, maybe that's
and
true.
let's see, bourbon, rum, brandy
Okay.
for 3 months.
Oh, my. Okay. Here is Amy Dickinson's column, Ask Amy. Dear Amy, I have not spoken to my mother in 2 weeks. She does not approve of my sexuality as a gender queer, and she does not approve of my partner. She has sent him vicious and threatening letters, called me at all hours of the day and night, and sent a variety of harassing text messages saying, "You are a joke. I want you out of my life, and you are why I have cancer." Oh my. I find this behavior abusive. I would like to have some kind of relationship with her if possible, but she forces me to choose between her and my partner. I am honestly also very concerned about her well-being. She never used to be this irate or abusive. I tried reaching out to my father, her sister, and her doctors to say that I am concerned about her erratic and worrisome behavior. My father responded, "Don't contact your mother's doctors anymore. You're making a fool out of yourself." Is it foolish to genuinely reach out to professionals when you are concerned about your parents' mental health? I have now taken the higher road in caring for myself and realizing that I probably can't change her. Do you have any suggestions? Signed, Parentless Son. Dear Parentless, you should not be contacting your mother's doctors, even if your concern is genuine and you are not her next of kin. If they are married, your father is. You presumably don't have a medical directive allowing you to have access to her medical records or make decisions on her behalf, and you are overstepping. If your mother has cancer, her illness or treatments might affect her behavior, but some people are abusive because they are mean-spirited or aren't getting their way, not because they are suffering from an illness. If your mother falls into this category, you should keep your distance. Stick to the high road. Let things cool down. If she calls you, only stay on the call if she behaves well. Do not reply to any abusive messages ever. Reach out to people who will open the door to you, not slam it in your face. You have a right to live your life, but for the time being, you should keep your distance from your mother. Okay, next letter. Dear Amy, I work for a company that has a great working environment. We celebrate everything and are always bringing treats for each other and decorating each other's cubicles. Upon being hired, we each filled out a questionnaire asking what our favorite things are, our favorite cake flavor, etc. When a birthday comes up, the list is sent to everyone in the department so they can each buy a gift for that person. Although I feel very special on my birthday and get lots of trinkets, if it were up to me, I'd say, no gifts, please. I have 8 people in my department. If I spend, say, $20 on everyone, that's $160 a year. This does not include the Christmas gift exchange that has a $50 cap and mandatory attendance. I'd feel rude and weird telling my boss I don't want to participate. We are the lowest paid department, and this is unaffordable for some of us. I'd like for the gift exchanges to be optional. I feel like we are all pressured to spend money on each other when none of us are friends outside of work. If it weren't for the questionnaire, gifts would not be given. What do you think? Signed, Overextended. Dear Overextended, this sounds like an episode of The Office, or rather every episode of The Office. I can well imagine the pressure of not only purchasing gifts for coworkers, but to come up with something from their list of preferences. Most of us can hardly come up with special gifts for family members several times a year. You should go to HR and simply express your very reasonable concerns about this. I assume your coworkers likely feel the same way. Your department should provide a favorite cake or sweet treat for each coworker. I love this part of the questionnaire, but discourage gift giving. And next, dear Amy, only child was resentful because after a life of sacrifice, her single father had finally decided to share his life with a wife. This 35-year-old child's father allowed her to live her life when she needed to, and now it is her turn to let him live his. Signed, a grandparent. Dear grandparent, exactly. Thank you.
For a long time, Rachel Ornelas had wanted a new puppy. After months of saying no, her boyfriend finally bought her one last month. This particular little fellow was a lab, was extra special. It came with an engagement ring, calling it a proposal. At Long Dog Fat Cat Pet Store in Village Point, Eric Sprague asked Ornelas to marry him, puppy in hand. Do I really get to keep the puppy? She responded, followed with a yes and a kiss. Sprague, 42, and Ornelas, 28, have been together for 4 years. Part of their routine has been to visit the pet store during pet adoption events, though the couple already had a black lab and a beagle foxhound mix. I never had any problem going to look at the puppies and dogs with her, but every time we went in there, I would tell her we're not taking one home. But that never stopped her from asking every time we went. The two met while serving in the U.S. Army. After Ornelas was discharged and Sprague retired, They connected and began dating. Though the two of them are from the South, he's from Alabama while she's from Florida, the couple moved to Omaha to be near Sprague's daughter, who lives with her mother in Bellevue. Sprague, who now works for Hormel Foods in Fremont, Nebraska, said they had been talking about getting married for more than a year. He bought the engagement ring before Christmas and started looking for an opportunity to make a memorable proposal. She kept dropping hints about how I was going to have to do something really creative when I proposed, he said. One day she kind of let me off the hook and said, "You could always just get me a puppy." Ornella said she would occasionally send Sprague videos of surprise engagements that she would see on Facebook. One particular video featured a puppy with a ribbon tied loosely around its neck. On the ribbon was an engagement ring. "I guess you remembered," said Ornelas, a certified nursing assistant. "I was expecting the proposal, but I wasn't expecting it to happen how it did." On January 10th, Sprague went to Long Dog Fat Cat to put his plan into motion. The staff agreed to help. That Saturday, he drove to Utan, Nebraska, to pick up the puppy and then dropped him off at the store, where staff cleaned him up and put a bow on him. Then, with 9-year-old Evelyn Sprague, got Cornelis to the pet store. "While we were there, I was trying to distract Rachel so Dad could grab the puppy," Evelyn said. Sprague retrieved the puppy, adorned with a red ribbon and engagement ring. "How about this one?" he asked as he knelt down. As Ornelas cooed over the little fur ball, Sprague asked her to marry him. "I thought he was joking," Ornella said. "The puppy had a ribbon on its neck, so I looked around the ribbon thinking, he's not being serious. And then I found the ring." Once it was established that she could also keep the puppy, Cornelis gleefully said yes. The couple named the puppy John Snow for short. As with the proposal, Evelyn will also play a part in the wedding as a junior bridesmaid. Rachel gave me a box and it had a note in it, and it said, "He popped the question to me. Now it's my turn. Will you be a junior bridesmaid?" And in the box was a ring pop. The wedding is planned for spring 2018 at the Texas home of Cornelius's aunt and uncle. In the meantime, the puppy has made himself at home with his new family. "Eric did a good job picking out the perfect ring that reflected my style, and our puppy is so smart. I love them both so much." Isn't that
good.
A nice story?
That's good. Okay, here's a strange story. It's headlined "For the Love of Fat Tires," and it's about a group of bicycle riders who ride bicycles with fat tires.
Really?
And there is a picture that is accompanying the story. When I say fat tires, I mean fat tires. I can't believe that you could ride a bicycle.
You have to blow them up
well
with air?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Well, the batch of snow at the end of a warm week kept some people bundled up indoors. Others saw it as perfect conditions for a bike ride. And not on a mountain bike, but on a wider wheeled version known as a fat tire bike. "This is the ideal weather for them," said Bob Evans, who drives in from Omaha to lead a fat tire bike ride on Saturday mornings in Lincoln. "They're designed for the snow, where that extra rubber can float up on the surface and give you more traction. The bikes have wider wheels than a standard bike, with tires measuring anywhere from 3.8 to 5.2 inches wide. They're also slightly heavier than other models, weighing well over 20 pounds. But the 10 riders of these fat tire bikes weren't going a slow pace as they departed lithely from Cycle Works bike shop at 27th and Vine to the snow-covered dirt trails of Wilderness Park on Saturday. The rides have become somewhat of a tradition over the past 3 years," said Evans, who owns 3 fat tire bikes. People are striving to find that bike that does everything well. And I think the fat tire bike is in that category. Evans said, "I don't think you can ride one without having a smile on your face. Anywhere from 10 to 20 riders meet up at CycleWorks on Saturday mornings and ride the nearly 22 miles to Wilderness Park and back. Of course, with some coffee breaks thrown in, Evans said. Jumping to another page. The people are a good time. Talking bikes and being out in the environment together. No phones, no internet, said Jamie Granquist, who has been riding her Salsa Bear Grease fat tire bike for 2 years. You get to do things you don't usually get to do on a thinner type of bike. When you ride with some fatter tires, you can go off-road and explore a little more. The wide tires are the perfect match for the wintry trails, Evans said, because the tires' wide berth and lower tire pressure allows them to sit up on slicker surfaces. The bikes are also great year-round, said Beatrice Councilman Joe Bilsbach, who has been riding with fat tires for over a year. It's a good workout throughout the entire year, he said. Riding on a fat tire bike builds up your stamina. It's a little tougher, but it can get you out of different environments. Lincoln's burgeoning fat tire bike community is part of a larger trend throughout the Midwest, where the demand for wider tires year-round is on the rise. Models can range anywhere from $800 at big box stores to higher quality ones like the Salsa Bucksaw, which can cost up to $4,500. CycleWorks has seen a steady increase in fat tire bike interest over the past few years, selling 54 bikes in 2016, said employee Bob Rosenthal. According to Evans, Lincoln's fat tire bike market outsells bigger cities like Omaha. He attributes the local cycling community to its popularity, calling Lincoln the mecca for grassroots gravel rides and races. Gary Little, a bike mechanic at CycleWorks, said fat tire bikes have reinvigorated biking. It brings back the fun of riding, Little said. It's like being 10 years old every time you get on. For Evans, the trend means more interest in biking. It starts conversations and helps us as a cycling community as a whole, because you can get people talking about bikes that might not normally talk about them. Evans said, it's almost like you can't help but ask a couple of questions.
I'm going to get into some business.
Okay.
The iPhone may soon be able to map your face for 3D selfies. Rumors about new iPhones normally center on the screen, processing chips, or whether there will be a headphone jack. But a new report from 9 to 5 Mac highlights something that could be a little controversial for Apple's next smartphone, a camera that can map your face. Apple may be considering a camera designed for authentication, augmented reality for its next high-end iPhone, according to a research note from Apple analyst Ming-Chi Kuo of KGI Securities. With a better sense of depth, this type of camera can tell how far away something is from the lens. It could even generate something like a 3D selfie, Mac reported. Apple declined to comment. Adding such a camera seems to be a natural next step for Apple. It already organizes iPhone photos based on the subjects it recognizes in images. And its competitors, such as Microsoft and Samsung, have used facial recognition for years to unlock phones. You may have heard in passing, however, that facial recognition technology has had some problems. Companies, including Hewlett-Packard and Nikon, have faced criticism when their cameras had trouble recognizing non-white faces and features. Experts say that problem could arise when the algorithms aren't exposed to a variety of faces while in development. Security experts also have raised questions about facial recognition as a form of authentication because it doesn't always work that well. Wearing a baseball cap or makeup can keep some sensors from recognizing your face. But experts say that Apple's reported plan to use a depth sensing camera for the feature addresses those issues. You can get much more accurate readings, said Chester Wazinski of the security firm Sophos. There are things that can mess with visual sensors. This sees through makeup to tissue. According to Consumer Reports, these sorts of cameras also have been shown to have fewer problems recognizing dark skin tones. Microsoft's version of depth sensing cameras made by Intel can tell identical twins apart, according to tests run by the Australian newspaper. But there's one concern about facial recognition technology that may not be resolved by a depth sensing camera: privacy. The technology would most likely give these companies a pretty comprehensive map of your face, which may give some people the creeps and raise fears about how the identification data could be used. Of course, we won't know how Apple will handle this data until an official announcement. And we won't know until then whether the feature can be disabled by the user. Apple has made several public commitments to protecting user privacy and information. When it introduced the photo features in June, the company took great pains to explain that it stores information only on a person's device, just as it does with your fingerprints. The company also has said that it practices what it calls differential privacy, a type of data collection that aims to prevent the ability to identify someone by their phone data. Apple has focused heavily on developing facial recognition technology in recent years. It has brought a handful of facial recognition companies, including one firm that will animate facial expressions in real time.
Okay, time for some sports news.
Sports.
And I've got a piece here that's called Quick Study. The obsession can be traced back to at least his early teens, it seems. One of those kids, I should tell you who this is about. It's about a Husker recruit, Tanner Lee. Those who have coached Tanner Lee explain that he is forever studying the game's inner workings, the defensive fronts, the coverages, the mind games within the game. He lived in the office, said Eric Price, who was Lee's offensive coordinator when the quarterback played at Tulane. As preparation goes, he was everything you wanted to coach as a quarterback. Most anyone can give a rough description of what happened on a given football play, but not even everyone out there on that field can explain why it happened. Figure out the answers to those whys, and a quarterback is much more likely to solve the next riddle put before him. Lee, who begins the next step this week in his pursuit of trying to become the starting quarterback at Nebraska, has apparently understood that since he was sitting in high school classrooms back in Destrehan, Louisiana, those studies translated well to the field. He was like an extension of us because he could get us into things that were good situations depending on what we were seeing from the defense, said, and now I've lost my page. Have you got something over there?
Oh, sure.
Bail me out.
I have. Where's that? Kurt Busch, winner in one wreck of a race from Daytona Beach. Decked in monster gear and chugging a tall boy of the energy drink as he was flanked by models, Kurt Busch celebrated the biggest win of his racing career. It was monster madness. Busch used a last lap pass to win the crash-filled Daytona 500 Sunday in the opening race of Monster Energy's new role as title sponsor of NASCAR's Top Series. Bush, it just so happens, is also sponsored by Monster, and the company has strongly stood by him through his rocky career. So this was a victory of redemption for Bush, who was suspended by NASCAR 2 days before the 2015 Daytona 500 for his off-track behavior, and for Monster, which has promised to pump new life into NASCAR's sagging sport. I've had a lot of people that have believed in me through the years, a lot of people that have supported me, Bush said. Bush was likely to celebrate late into the night, well after the banged-up number 41 Ford heads to the museum for its year-long display at Daytona International Speedway. The more that becomes unpredictable about Daytona, the more it becomes predictable to predict unpredictability, Bush said. Boy, that's a mouthful. This car is completely trashed. There's not a straight panel on it. The strategy today, who knew what to pit when, what segments were what. Everybody's wrecking as soon as we're done with the second segment. The more that I've run this race, the more that I just throw caution to the wind, let it rip, and just elbows out. That's what we did. It was NASCAR's finest moment, though, as multiple accidents pared down the field and had a mismatched group of drivers racing for the win at the end. It appeared to be a pole sitter, Chase Elliott's race to lose. Then he ran out of gas. So did Kyle Larson, Martin Truex Jr., Paul Menard, and Casey Kane, as they all slipped off the pace. Bush sailed through for his first Daytona 500 victory in 16 tries. It also was the first Daytona 500 win for Stewart-Haas Racing, which is co-owned by Tony Stewart. The three-time champion retired at the end of last season and watched his 4 cars race from the pits. I ran this damn race 17 years and couldn't win it. So finally won it as an owner, Stewart said. It's probably the most patient race I've ever watched. Kurt Busch run. He definitely deserved that one for sure. It was a crushing defeat for Elliott, who was developing a reputation as a driver unable to immediately digest defeat. He left the track without comment in a car driven by his father, Hall of Famer Bill Elliott. Ryan Blaney finished second in a Ford. A.J. Allmendinger was third in a Chevrolet. And Almirola was fourth for Richard Petty Motorsports. The first points race of the Monster era was run under a new format that split the 500 miles into 3 stages. Kyle Busch won the first stage. Kevin Harvick won the second stage, and neither was a contender for the win. NASCAR also this year passed a rule that gives teams just 5 minutes to repair any damage on their cars, or they were forced to retire. The race was slowed by wreck after wreck after wreck, including a 17-car accident at the start of the final stage that ended the race for 7-time and reigning series champion Jimmy Johnson and Danica Patrick. It was a particularly rough incident for Patrick, since her Stewart-Haas racing team, which had all 4 of its cars collected in the accident. But Kyle Busch was able to continue while most of the top contenders found themselves on the outside looking in. Some years, I think we have it, where we run here and nobody wrecks and it's great racing, said Brad Keselowski. And then you have other years like this, where everybody wrecks all the time.
Is this the reason that people follow me on the interstate at like 2 feet behind my rear bumper?
Isn't that scary?
It seems that way. I guess they're trying to trade paint. Is that what
Yeah.
Okay, I did find this Tanner Lee story. It's kind of interesting, so I'll read a bit more of it. As much promise as Lee is said to possess, he is stepping up now in competition, having transferred last year to Nebraska from Tulane after the Green Wave changed coaches and adapted more of an option-based offense that doesn't match the quarterback's pro-style skill set. Those who have coached Lee, though, are earnest in their beliefs that the quarterback will find success in Lincoln. Price had as close a view as anyone to what Lee has done as a college quarterback. His insights also suggests one shouldn't get overly carried away with any opinions based off quick Google searches of the quarterback stats at Tulane. Those stats in a snapshot, the 6'4", 205-pound quarterback threw for 3,601 yards in 19 games with a touchdown/interception ratio close to even, 23 touchdowns/21 interceptions, and a completion percentage of 53.6. What about those latter numbers? According to Price, the Green Wave ran a very complex offense, and Lee picked it up quickly for a young quarterback. He was also on a team that the coach acknowledged was limited at some positions around him. Lee took his share of licks. We asked the quarterback to do everything, make all the calls. He had to be Drew Brees for us in order for us to be successful. He was just right out of high school. We threw him in there, Price said. We weren't a very good team, and we were playing against better talent at the time. A lot of his stats and the things that looked bad on paper really weren't his fault. He probably did the best he could under the circumstances. I think if we had someone else, we would have done a lot worse. In some games, Price said Lee was one of the bright spots and never lacked in the leadership department, even when the team struggled. He really took the blame for a lot of things that he probably didn't have to, just because that's the way he's made up. Former Husker linebacker Josh Banderas, who saw Lee's work as the scout team quarterback last year, indeed said the quarterback had all the traits you'd want. The guys love him, Banderas said.
Hey, Lincoln native Sock captures Delray Beach Open title. This is tennis. Top-seeded Roundneck withdrew from the Delray Beach Open finals Sunday after injuring his hamstring a day earlier, giving the title to Jack Sock. Roundneck slightly tore his right hamstring Saturday night, feeling a sharp pain while chasing down a drop shot in his semifinal victory over Juan Martin del Porto. Roundneck tried to ignore the discomfort, opting to go to sleep and hoping he would feel fine in the morning. Instead, after getting 2 hours of treatment, the 26-year-old Canadian, ranked 4th in the world, hobbled onto a practice court where Sock was warming up and announced he would be unable to play. The third-seeded Sock, a Lincoln native, wound up with his second title of the year and moved up to his career best 18th in the ATP rankings. The 24-year-old also won last month in New Zealand and helped the U.S. reach the quarterfinals of the Davis Cup. Sox is 11-1 this year, with his only loss to Joe Wilfred Tsonga in the third round of the Australian Open. Only Roger Federer, who has won the Australian Open, has a better winning percentage than Sock this year. He also helped lead the U.S. to the Davis Cup quarterfinals with a first-round win over Switzerland. Sock, who supplanted John Isner as the top-ranked American male last October, said the walkover was not ideal for either side. But a title is a title. I've been playing well. Now I just have to keep my head down and do everything I can to progress. And I see it's 12 o'clock. Time for us to say have a wonderful week.
And please join us again next week.
Thank you both very much. Thank you.
Gee, it always goes so fast.
I got into trouble over here because I had the same problem I had earlier. And
You
I
have
couldn't,
what?
well, I had the same problem I had when Sybil came in to help me.
Oh,
And so I started messing around and all I could get was yesterday's paper, the Sunday
oh,
paper.
for heaven's sake.
That's why I was being kind of careful about what I read, because there were things that they were competing in yesterday and I didn't know how they turned out.
Well,
So-
what was wrong?
I don't have any idea.
I hate it.
You remember that Jane's gonna be out at your place tonight? Okay, she just wanted me to remind.
I didn't know if it was, it says 6 o'clock on my calendar,
Well, go and ask her for
Yeah.
sure.
so I better,
Sybil,
I thought,
I
well,
ran into trouble again with the
uh-oh.
same thing that happened earlier. Okay,
Why?
I don't know. All I could find was Sunday's paper. So I was reading
Oh.
Sunday's Sport.
What you do is just go up here, just hit this, get out of there, and just hit this again.